Allison Ravenhall. Let's build more inclusive Android apps.
Yeah. The poor lost platform of Android. It gets so ignored. It's really sad. Thanks, Adam. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Allison Ravenhall. I work at Intopia as a digital accessibility sensei. Consultant is a boring word, and I also do actually have a black belt in karate, so it's legit. I'm here to talk to you today about building more inclusive Android apps, but before I jump into that, I'd love to encourage you all to tweet accessibly. Okay, so Twitter has the ability for you to add image descriptions to your photos to make Twitter a much more exciting experience for people using screen readers. So if you haven't already, do please jump into your Twitter app, get into the settings and privacy, tap accessibility, and then find the compose image descriptions option, tick it, and then from there on, once you add a photo to any of your tweets, you will be prompted to add a description as well. So that's my photo there of me selfieing at PauseFest last year. And of course, I have to describe that so everyone can live the dream of being at PauseFest and taking selfies. So Android as a platform does have quite a variety of accessibility features baked into the platform, so you as developers can take advantage of them. So I do have a giant list on the screen. I'll call out a few highlights. For mobility, we have things like voice access and switch access. For vision impairment, we have the Talkback screen reader. We can invert colours and invoke magnification. For hearing impairment, to support hearing impairment, we have mono audio, we have live transcribe and captions. And for cognitive impairment, we can have select to speak. We can also have the dark theme for better ease of reading and those sorts of things. So as developers, and as Android developers in particular, I think it's worthwhile diving into these settings, being aware of them, and understanding how these settings currently play with your app. Does your app respect font size? Does your app respect magnification and inverting colours? Does your app respect switch access? Though you might need to buy some switches to check that. Now, I appreciate that doing some of these things is a little bit next level, so I want to just jump into something that's right down on the level and encourage you, implore you to download from the Play Store the Google Accessibility Scanner. It's built by Google, it's free, no barrier to entry, just bump on the Play Store, get it in. When you download it, it will install within your settings app. It's not a standalone, it's an augmentation within the settings app of your device. And it's a pretty handy little guy. When you enable it, it presents itself as a small round blue button with a tick. And that tick will float over and above whatever screen you happen to be presenting on your app at the time. It can be like the default home screen, it can be a web page, it can be an app, whatever the deal is. The screenshot that I currently have up on stage right now is a screenshot from the Australia Post app. Greetings to any Australia Post developers that we may have in the room today. I actually presented this talk on the weekend at Australia Post as part of another conference, and they really appreciated being made an example of. I consider it a free audit. So, I'm doing them a favour. So, if you're going to use the scanner, you're going to tap that tick, and the scanner will go away and do a shot of the current page that's in view, and it will return a screenshot of that page, and the elements that have potential accessibility issues will be presented with an outline. And you can tap on any of those elements directly and be presented with the issue details. Or you can tap on the list button or the export button at the top in the title bar, and it will present either the list of issues on screen, bang, 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 and you can work your way through them nice and systematically, or you can export them out to an email or a document and check them all out there. So I've got a couple of examples of the types of issues that the accessibility scanner will throw up for you. And the beauty of the issue descriptions is that not only will it say, hey, your color contrast sucks. Well, that's bad. But in addition, it will also say, what you need to do is make your color contrast at least this. It's helping you to solve the problem. So even if you don't have a handy accessibility guru in your back pocket, this guy will actually tell you what to do yourself. And if you don't get the detail from what it's presenting in front of your face, there is a Learn More link at the bottom of the description, which will take you out to our webpage and give you all the details and all the background about color contrast. And in this case, why we have 4.5 as a suggested ratio. It might also suggest tools that you would use to check the color contrast and make better matches and all that sort of thing. So the current example I have on the screen is the word delivered is presented in green text on a white background. The reported contrast is 3:1, or just over 3:1. The requirement for standard body text is 4.5:1. So obviously we need to darken that green down to make it pop just that little bit more. I'm happy to report that since I took this screenshot, it's been updated. The power of positive reinforcement. So, they're not evil, they're fixing things. One of the other issues that the accessibility scanner will report is touch target size. And their recommendation for touch target size is based on the Google Material Guidelines, that all touch targets, interactive elements, need to have a touch target of at least 48 by 48 dp. The example that I've got on the screen right now is the Add a Delivery Address button from the Australia Post app. It's a most of the width of the screen button, so width-wise it's top-notch, but height-wise it's only 40 dp, and the issue text is saying it's only 40 dp. And it's recommending bump it up to 48, make that button a bit fatter, and it'll be much easier for people to hit. The last issue example I'd like to show you from the accessibility scanner is no label. I cannot believe this exists in a live app, but let's run with it because it's a great example. There is a dirty, great big red button that's about as big as my thumbprint that exists on the home page of the Australia Post app, and all it's got on it is a white plus. Red button, white plus. That's it for visually on the screen. And the scanner is saying, this item may not have a label readable by screen readers. And you're like, well, yeah, no deal. It may say plus, I'm not sure. From the visual perspective, you can basically assume from the context, it's on the homepage. The homepage shows a list of parcels that you're tracking via Australia Post. You could imply visually that that button enables you to add more parcel details. But if we jump back to our settings app and we activate Talkback and we experience that button as someone using a screen reader and hearing the content of the page rather than seeing it, we're going to have a different experience. So I've got a short video that's going to demonstrate Talkback. It's going to be a little bit quick, so keep your ears open. It does have captions as well. The last announcement is the key. We're going to move backwards through the page, and you're going to hear what Talkback says on that big red button.
Talkback on. QEV 8074937. More. Double tap to activate. Account. Find us. Selected. Track. Unlabeled button. Double tap to activate. Unlabeled button. Double tap to activate.
Yeah, I had to do it twice just to rub it in. Unlabeled button. Who's going to tap an unlabeled button? Like, you just left hanging going, what? That could delete things, it could save things, it could submit things, it could create things. You're just left with a button that you don't want to tap, right? So, thankfully, easy fix. Content description. App developers, please use the content description attribute to define the accessibility label, the label that is used by screen readers to announce to screen reader users. So in this case, I think I'd be saying something like add a new parcel or track a new parcel, something like that. You do not need to use the word button in your label. You heard the word button already. The screen reader has picked up that this element is a button and set it for you. If you say button in your label, you're going to have track a new parcel button, and that's a bit awkward. So leave it alone. One of the other awesome features of screen readers is the ability to skim content. The default navigation mode is to swipe element by element linearly through the whole page, and that can get pretty tedious when you've got quite long pages of content. So the Android Talkback or Google Talkback has the ability in this local context menu to skim content by type, and the selected content type that I've got on the screen right now is headings, because heading navigation, jumping content by headings, is the single most popular method of navigation by screen reader users. I get why it would be. As a visual user, we often use the headings to have a bit of a scan and understand the concept of the page, the context of the page, and the relationships that are going on. Now, headings are actually quite a new concept on the Android platform. It's only been in the last one or two iterations of the Android API that headings have actually been announced and recognized within apps. And the ability for developers to actually define a text view as a heading now exists. Please encourage your developers, if they're not here already, to set the accessibility heading property to true in order for that heading navigation to be supported in your app. Now this was the next slide I've got here was really quite unpopular in the Google conference that I was at on the weekend. The title is Screen Readers Prefer Apple, and it's the result of the most recent WebAIM screen reader survey, where 69% of mobile screen reader platform users reported using Apple, 27.5% used Android, so just under a third, or just over a quarter, and some other way out there fans are off on their Blackberries or their Nokias or some other somewhere else. And so some developers will use this as an opportunity to say, everyone's on Apple. I don't need to bother with accessibility on Android. Why? Extra effort, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yes, Apple's winning the game right now, but I would like to also point out in that same survey that historically, Apple's been on top, but the trend is that in the last survey, Apple's market share is dropping and Android is continuing on the rise. So Apple peaked in the last survey at 76% of market share, then back down now to 69%. And Android has consistently moved over the last 9 years from 4% on a consistent trend up and up. It's now on 28%, and I see a point where these lines converge and potentially cross. And it makes sense because Android has a lower barrier to entry. Android devices cost less. They're more readily accessible to people on limited incomes. Enough of the screen readers. Sorry for the screen reader users, but there's more to accessibility than screen readers, slightly. And one of the other ways that we interact with our phones is entirely hands-free. And I think it's really important for app developers to appreciate the hands-free, voice-controlled experience. So I'd like to introduce you to a couple of voice access app users who don't use their hands for a couple of reasons to interact with their phone.
Let's go, guys. My name's Stephanie, and I just finished my master's in advertising. I'm a C4, C5 split level quadriplegic. I have no feeling from my collarbone down, so it is absolutely vital that I'm able to use my voice. Okay, Google, start voice access.
My name's Jeff, and I have a neurological condition called essential tremor. It is incredibly difficult to use my hands and fingers. It is very easy for me to use my voice. Okay, Google, start voice access.
After using this product for probably about 10 seconds, I think I'm falling in love with it. Open camera. You use your voice, and you're able to access the world. Shutter. Share. Hangouts. Astrid Weber. Send.
I cannot tell you how excited I am about this product. Open calendar. New when you don't have the ability to use your fingers and hands. Family movie night. It's really all about voice.
So those were a couple of really good examples of people using their devices in a different way. So Stephanie, in her wheelchair, had her phone mounted on a stand. She wasn't reaching out and interacting with her phone at all. And Jeff, with his hands constantly in movement with his essential tremor, was able to hold his device to put it down on the desk, but whenever he went to tap a button on the screen, his hands were shaking back and forth, maybe 10 centimeters at a time. So, the ability to control that tremor to the point where he can touch a button accurately would involve a lot of work for him, both physically and cognitively. So voice access presents itself as a series of dynamic labels that appear over the top of your app. So we have a screenshot of the Australia Post app right now, and all of the interactive elements have a tiny little number superimposed over the top of it. So if you can't see the visible label like Stephanie was using, she was saying voice commands based on the labels that she could see in front of her, you can alternately use these numbers. So that big red button with a plus, you wouldn't say plus. You might not say add because you don't actually know what the label is, but you could say something like 5 or 4 and it would trigger those things. So I think it's worthwhile. It's a very low barrier to entry. It's very easy and intuitive to use. It's very easy to switch on and off, and it won't change your gestures like screen readers do, which makes it a bit scary for people who are unfamiliar. So I highly encourage people to pick this one up and have a play. Now, I've got 2 minutes left, and I'm going to chuck some things out that can be a little bit controversial, but I think they really, really need to be done. So Stephanie, as I said, has her phone mounted on a stand. She doesn't have the ability to readily reach out and turn her phone around. And one of the new requirements from WCAG 2.1 that came in last year is that our apps should support both portrait and landscape orientation on devices which support multiple orientations. We need to make sure that Stephanie is not forced to turn her head on her side in order to read and interact with your app. So this is a really fun conversation to have with designers. They're like, oh my God, multiple dimensions, multiple designs, extra work. Yes, yes, yes it is. Do it. It's the right thing to do. Similarly for Jeff, may with his moving hands may inadvertently trigger motion interactions that he didn't actually mean to cause. So if your app interacts with its users via motion, whether it's shake to play or wave to say hello or anything like that, so it's either the movement of the person or the movement of the device, please try, where possible, to provide an alternative Enable Jeff to turn it off and use some on-screen buttons instead so that he can control what's going on without his tremor interfering with the experience and how efficient he can be. So, this was a really quick blast. I'd love to talk more to all of you. Usually I have 2 days of training time to run through all this sort of thing, but 25 minutes, I'm here, I'm done. Here is what I just talked about. Update your Twitter settings, label your photos, play with your Android accessibility settings. Use the accessibility scanner to find out what's going wrong with your app at the first level. Try out Talkback and voice access. Experience the different ways that people interact with apps. Support portrait and landscape in your apps, make them move, and add alternatives to motion. I have a list of links up here. If my scheduling has worked properly, they should be on Twitter in about 5 minutes. So you can go to my Twitter feed and get them all there. I've got a series of bit.ly links. Get the scanner, get Talkback. I've got a cheat sheet for gestures for Talkback. I've got a cheat sheet for voice access commands. I've also got links to the Google accessibility team and developer guides. There's heaps of support for the Android platform accessibility-wise. Do all the good things. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Allison.